Thank you, Senator Birdwell. And this bill came through Border Security Committee. We had quite a few questions. And on the Texas Border Force staffing, what are the qualifications to be part of this Border Force unit that we'll have along the border?
As Director McCraw had said, it could be made up of, we do allocate 50 new DPS officers to initially staff it in the budget, but it could be former military, former Border Patrol, or people that are already a Class 1 peace officer. So the training requirements, unlike what was in HB20 in the House, the training requirements are such that the DPS, if they already have some pre-training, can do an abbreviated academy, but they must come out of a DPS academy before they can be assigned to the Border Force to be considered Class 1 peace officers with prior service experience.
But there would not be licensed police officers.
You will have those that are licensed can be have arrest authority. Senator King will have an amendment that specifies this, but you can have commissioned and non-commissioned. Commissioned will be in a law enforcement function. Non-commissioned will be in a service support function to the Border Force.
Well, I mean, there's some good parts about House Bill 7 dealing with the use of technology, but in the bill itself, there's part of the bill that says that the Border Force will have the authority to inspect passenger and commercial vehicles passing through ports of entry or traveling within 30 miles of a port. I mean, how would that work?
Well, DPS is seeking technology that will allow them to screen much of the traffic that's coming through at the ports of entry. There, as you know, there's a buffer area that belongs to federal authority, but the DPS would operate initially in 5 of our 29 ports of entries with the funding that we have here to be able to screen vehicles that are coming across in the international ports of entry, coming into Texas, to screen them with new technologies to ensure whether it's human trafficking, whether it's fentanyl, or any other types of illicit materials, unlawful materials, that the DPS begins that process of screening those vehicles.
Well, and would they be able to have roving patrol stops along the border, or just at certain points in the ports of entry?
They will be able to move those points of entries in that 30-mile radius, but they will not be mobile in the sense of rolling checkpoints. There'll be checkpoints that will be set up at various intervals, but they will be in that 30-mile radius. That's why we give them the 30-mile radius to decide what day they work in this point, what day they work at that point, so that there's a random nature to where they set up their checkpoints. Unlike, in many respects, what the Border Patrol does, their checkpoints are not set up at a random circumstance. They're pretty static. DPS's would be random.
But would they be able to stop any vehicle?
Texas already has the authority to do that. We can do safety checks on those vehicles already.
Well, are we talking about trucks? Are we talking about cars? What are we talking about?
We're talking about commercial vehicles and personal vehicles as well. Those can be stopped as well.
So we would have those checkpoints within 30 miles of the border and be able to stop any car coming down
law enforcement would have that authority to do so, yes, sir.
So this is pretty much checkpoints where you will stop any car, ask for documentation whether they're here in this country legally?
No, it's not an immigration checkpoint. It's a contraband or a safety checkpoint.
So would they be able to search cars without probable cause?
You would have to have probable cause to search the vehicle, but the technology could determine, the technology that Director McCraw spoke about, could determine that there is either contraband material or whether that's human beings, whether that's fentanyl, whether that's methamphetamines, the ability to check those vehicles for those things at the border checkpoints.
Well, the technology that you're describing, they do have that at the Border Patrol checkpoints stationary, but they don't check every single vehicle. They only check some commercial trucks.
Right. And DPS would do this. DPS would do the same, Senator. There's not an expectation that the DPS will look at every vehicle like we did for that short period of time when the Governor Abbott signed those agreements, just before he signed those agreements with the Mexican states that are contiguous to Texas, where we were inspecting every vehicle for that short period of time. We have the authority to do that, but that's not the expectation here.
Well, and that's one of my concerns in allowing vehicles within 30 miles of the border be stopped at a checkpoint without any type of probable cause, just to ask questions of the drivers and passengers.
Well, you can do a safety inspection, or based upon the technology that they'll have that can do screening of those vehicles as they drive through that technology, that could present probable cause, those things. But the officers aren't just going to, they're not enforcing immigration law here, Senator.
Okay, so then the only purpose of having those roving or stationary checkpoints will be just to inspect commercial trucks? That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Most of it will be commercial trucks, because that's how most of the drugs are coming through, but it could also mean personal vehicles as well. But I think the larger target is commercial vehicles. Yes, sir.
Well, just a point, and that is, many times I'll drive up 281, and it'll be car after car after car, truck after truck after truck. What type of traffic jam or what type of backup would we have within 30 miles of the border?
Well, that depends on what the DPS decides to do and the discretion that they bring to how they operate those checkpoints.
Well, I just think that is really not workable the way it's worded, to have those checkpoints. The type of equipment that we are talking or discussing, our X-ray type of equipment, that equipment is very difficult to be able to move around wherever you want, make it mobile, like X-rays. So that is a big issue. In that many will will feel that being harassed, intimidated, if they have to go through all these checkpoints set up by this border unit.